everyone. Welcome to our Pieware Homeschool Masterclass. This evening we have Stuart Shulman from Integrated Effects and UDB with us. He's going to work with us about optimizing our drill files for working with UDB. Stuart has been with us for 15 plus years as a drill designer, and he's been on the educational team with UDB for just over a year now.
I think 3 years now. This is starting season 3. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, can you give us a little bit of background about yourself? How you started writing?
Yeah. Originally from Arizona. I'm not a Texas native. I'm a transplant. And so grew up in Phoenix, started marching drum corps in 2001. Somehow got a spot in the Vanguard in 2001. And I say that honestly because enough people quit that I got a spot.
Oh,
so
there we go.
I was a stubborn little 16-year-old that went out there and decided not to march the cadet corps, and I would just be an alternate and got a spot. And then the next year, somehow I became drum major.
So
I was drum major there for 4 years, which really allowed me to create a lot of great connections with the staff members there. That's in fact how I got a job out here in Texas, because a lot of our brass staff were directors in Texas. So I just got to see things from a different perspective being on the podium for so long, and got a lot of access to a lot of the staff members, specifically Myron Rosander, the drill designer back then when I marched. And so just having a lot of conversations with him, and writing drills seemed like something that was a little bit more accessible than writing music at the time. Still going through my college degree for music education, so I could fiddle around on Pieware on my computer, and I could draw stuff out on paper as well. And so it's just something I started fiddling with during undergrad, and a band director was crazy enough to let me start writing for them after I aged out from Vanguard in 2005. So 2006 was the first season I wrote a drill, and 1 turned into 3, turned into 5, and before you know it, you've got a ton. And so I ended up teaching in high school, and then I taught at A&M Commerce here at Texas A&M University in Commerce, just out of Dallas for 3 years before I decided to go full-time writing as a drill designer.
Wonderful. Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, let's just dive right in when you're ready. Let's take a look at what we can do to optimize our drills.
Yeah, so I've got about a list of 15 things. A lot of it, some of it may be common sense, some things you may be doing already, and some things that may be new to you. So we're going to kind of explore the whole gamut of things. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to flip back and forth between Pieware and UDBapp, so you can kind of see how we do things in the software and how it transfers into the app. The first thing I'll say is that about 99% of the things that you do in Pieware are going to transfer into the app. We've got a great relationship with Pieware and working together, and just about everything you do is going to show up here. And we'll talk about some of the things and how we can maximize that usage. The first thing I'll talk about is syncing the audio. It's really critical. I've gone out to work with a lot of groups, and I do a lot of part of the education team. I do a lot of setup clinics. So I go out and work with the student leaders, the band directors, and sometimes the whole band. And not a lot, but enough that I want to mention it. The audio isn't synced. And with such a powerful tool as Pieware and with Ultimate Drill Book, having the audio there is such a critical tool for the students. They can actually now see for the first time the visualization of the drill, and being able to hear what they're supposed to be playing is such a huge advantage. And from a band director's point of view, they can use Ultimate Drill Book as a rehearsal tool. So they can say, hey, here's the 8 count set, here's the 16 count set, and they can just press go, and the band and the students will hear the music. So immediately they can look at their drill. They'll probably have the audio off because you don't want 100 and whatever audio is going at the same time. But they can visualize, see the drill, and then they can hear what they're supposed to play. So that's such a critical tool in your toolbox. I will say that the best option in terms of Pieware and UDB integration is to use that file as an OGG file. It's going to be the smallest compressed file that you can use. And we're going to try to maximize in terms of file size. You want to have the smallest file size so the students, when they download it, it happens just like that. So yeah, that's my little spiel on the audio. The next thing we'll talk about is label placement. So I'm just going to go in and get into Pieware here. and I'm going to create some forms. I have everything shortcut coded into like a 20 key programming mouse and a 20 key left-hand keyboard. So if I go really quick with stuff, that's why. So I'm just going to create a spiral, let's say, and let's just lock this in at 4-step intervals. Oops. 4 steps, we'll open that up. It doesn't need to look pretty. This is just for demonstration purposes. And I'm going to come in here and open up some sets in here. It's blocking me.
You can hide that.
Yeah, there it is. Hi, there it is. So we'll come in here and we'll create a couple sets. We'll come in on the first set and we'll label all of these. We'll just make these A1 and we'll keep them X's and we'll press OK and accept here. So the default just is to point it down. And then sometimes when you come through here, let's say we reshape this into a new set. So it's not really a follow leader, but we're going to create kind of reset shape, expand this out. Sometimes you'll come in. What did I flip that?
Copy and paste.
Yep. And we're going to flip that order, and now we're better, much better. So sometimes you'll come in here and you'll go into the performer labeling tool. You'll pick one of those contours, right? So either go on the inside or go on the outside. Right here is where I'd like you to pay attention. It's really easy just to press the contour B, and then it always defaults to just that one count. And if we do that, it's just going to change this on this one count. So if you follow with the labels here, they're all pointed down, they're all pointed down, and then it flips to make it look nice on this set page. Now this was great when we just were printing off drill sets. Made it look pretty on that one count, perfect. But now we're actually seeing the visualization in the app on every single count. So if I come into this next set here, and then I reshape this even further, let's say it expands out. Obviously we would never do this, but for demonstration purposes. And then let's say we used contour A and made it come inside. Again, only this one count. So you can see that it was there and then it flips around again. Or if we use even the other contour, we flipped it out. So then when we go into the app, it's gonna, these handles are gonna be flipping up and down and doing kind of wild things. And I can show you a visualization of that in the app. Let me bring in this screen here. Oops. Find that screen again. Here we are. So if I were to press play here, you can see how it just flipped down. We're going to get to our next set. It flipped up, it flipped back down. And so this can get really distracting when you're watching the drill as you're doing that. So I always suggest to everybody that when you're coming in here, select your performers, come to your performer labeling tool, bring everything as close as you can, press down for the label, and press further once. And if you accept that for all counts, it's going to look great in the app. Now, obviously, you could do up if you wanted to, or you could do to the angle. But if you just keep it consistent, it looks really clean. You're not going to have handles that are sticking out and kind of doing weird things, or some are going up, some are going down, some are sideways. Because sometimes when you do a follow leader, or you do a preliminary or a reshape, it points it in its most natural way, is in terms of the direction that it went sometimes. Just press everything down for all counts. You'll never have a problem. And then also, if you're doing any kind of pod things where everyone's are really close together, you can always take that grouping and move those labels outside of the actual dots themselves. So then they're actually readable. I always suggest to do that as well.
Right.
So yeah, that's my little spiel on pods and handling and label position.
It'll give you a little bit easier to read.
Yes. The other thing that I suggest is you can see when I did the labels here, I did A, and this happens to be 31 because it's at the end, but I started with a letter and then I did a number. Some drill designers will do 1 through whatever, and that may be at the request of the band director as well. I've worked with a couple of schools that just want me to label 1 to whatever it is. And then some band directors may want every single section to start over in that. And that's great. That's how I do it. But if we don't put a distinguishing letter here, it can get really messy inside of UDB, because one of the great features is you can see, I'll bring this over again here into screen. You can see everyone's a dot right now. Well, I can come into my settings, and this isn't the default setting, by the way. The surrounding performer symbols is labeled as dots right now. The default is icons and letters. So if I come in here now and back into the drill, you can see that everyone's an X, all right? And I can show you another option or another drill file here where I've got, let's see here. Let's use this one right here. So everybody is labeled as, you know, T and C and B for their instrument grouping, but we've got labels 1 through 120, I think it was. Now, when I change my setting, and you can see that it's nice to see those letters, but it's a little harder to see exactly where that position is. And so I always suggest when you're going in there to teach, especially for the students, is to go into dots in your preferences. Mm-hmm. It just looks a lot cleaner. It's really a lot more precise. But if you haven't distinguished the letter in the labeling, it's just a bunch of numbers. And so it can get a little confusing, especially as a director, you know, knowing exactly where the instruments are and which instruments are where. And then if you have a clinician come in, they don't have a chance.
So you would suggest that if you're using symbols to identify the performers, also repeat that symbol in the label at the same time?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I can show you the difference again. We can come into another drill file that has everything labeled. And so we can come in here and we can see that, you know, A2 right here, A1, we still see exactly what they are.
Right.
Yeah, so great for the students and great for the clinician that may come in and for the band directors as well.
Right. And also in Piware, if you choose to have printed output as well, you can choose print all performers as dots. So you can still have your symbols in the drill design view and then have dots in the output as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Okay. Next thing is color coding your sections. So again, I'll kind of bring the screen back in here and zoom out a bit. So color coding the sections is really important for, again, just to have a little different determination as to where everybody is. I can open up a file here that doesn't have that. Let's see here. So everyone's just a blue dot right now. Mm-hmm. So you can tell where everybody is, right, but it gets a lot harder to understand exactly where the sections are and what everyone's doing. I've also kind of disrupted the label symbols in terms of pointing in different directions as well. Mm. So this is just a lot harder to really understand what's going on, to have the sections kind of segmented. And from a student standpoint, it's a lot of the same. Mm-hmm. And from there, and they like seeing the colors, and it really helps them understand, oh, this is where the flutes are grouped together. This is where the clarinets are grouped together. And then if you have field techs out there, they understand exactly kind of where they may need to be. And the director can definitely talk about different things with the sections really quickly. And so me as a drill designer, I have like a grid or like a label symbol map for myself. And I try to label or color code the sections the same on every single drill that I do. And so the colors aren't changing between movements either.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Do you have a particular set of colors that you use for each section?
Yeah, I've got kind of the color map that I use. Mm-hmm. I can, let's see here. I'll go into this augmented reality one, so I can show you. I'll kind of fast forward to see where they all get together. So I tend to have the woodwinds in more of a lighter colors and the brass in more of a darker color. You can see I've got the altos and the mellophones as shades of orange, just from the same color voice as well. So that helps me when they're grouped together from a drill writing standpoint, knowing that those voices are together. You can also see the low brass are shades of blue. I've got a light blue for the trombones and the stock blue for the euphoniums. And I keep the tubas as black because they're marching with a drum line a lot of the time as well. and I keep the drum line as black. Trump is just red because, well, they're red.
Right.
Usually code red, right?
Exactly, right? Doug asks that you have your ensemble in the front. That is a standard prop. It'll import a prop image there, and so he has the ensemble as a standard prop there.
Yeah. Any other questions that have come up that we should address?
Do you have any suggestions for colorblind color coding?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, just try to. It's red green usually, typically, if I remember correctly. So I would just try to stay away from those colors. In Highware itself, there's a couple different color options. But I'm sure Dustin, you can speak better to this than I can. You've got your stock colors that you can select, but you can actually key code in colors, I think, right?
Right, you can. But my question was, do you work with any groups that are colorblind that you might have a preset that you work with?
I have never been asked to do that.
Okay.
So it's honestly not on my radar a lot. But I can obviously shift the reds out and replace it with a yellow or something like that. Absolutely.
Great.
And the next thing on my list here was tarps and performer props and props in general and field covers. So you can see on this example right here, and I can open up the file if we need to later too.
Yeah.
But I have quite a few things on the field already. So I've got some tarps here on the side one front corner and the side two back corner. And I've actually got a whole field cover, which is a custom field that I've made for my business that I can write with. And so it softens the view a little bit too, because you can see the green field. I've got some images on it as well. All of those things I did in Pieware, and they transfer seamlessly into the app. And you can also turn those off as well. So you can see at the beginning, I can select a kid here, and let's go back to the beginning of the show. You can see everybody starts on those tarps. Well, from a teaching standpoint, there's a lot going on right here. So I probably don't want to start the show or when I'm teaching this with those on. So I can come in here into my settings. I can go to show hide sections. If I scroll all the way down to the bottom, I can turn off the floor cover props. If I unselect that, go back to my preferences, now I see a clean field. So there is a difference between the field covers and those props that we talked about and the standard props. So I've got my front ensemble here and just a front screen and a back screen here. Those are just your standard props that you can actually have images for, and those will stay. I can turn those off as well in the settings, show hide sections again, and just basic props.
Okay.
So again, anything you do in Pieware, it's going to show up. So now I've just got a clean blank field.
Right.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll say is that, the grid lines, these are the default black and blue that you have in there. I know a lot of drill designers have worked to create their own custom colored fields, some yellows, maybe some light oranges that are a lot softer on the eyes instead of the blue and the white. That's great. I've written like that before too. I will stress though that when you do go to export out to the students into the band's files, go back to that stock standard colors, because your custom colors will transfer to them. So they probably have a little harder time reading if the background's yellow or something that's light, that are better for your eyes for a long time.
Well, maybe have a design grid and then have an export grid. And you can change those on the fly there at the title bar where you see the high school true numbers.
Yes. So we'll turn all those fun props back on here.
Awesome.
And I'm gonna open up this file because we'll talk about a couple other things as well from that file actually.
Okay.
So, like I said, I created this custom one here. That's just going to the floor cover up tool right here. And there's some great stock ones that Pieware supplies for you right here. And then I've created my own one as well. This integrated effects field service doesn't help me create the right size file today, actually. So those are available for you, whether you're doing the NCAA one, whether you're doing the high school field. If you're outside of Texas, Texas is special. We use the NCAA ones. So those are there for you as well, for you to kind of play with and put on there.
Right.
And then again, from a writing standpoint, it's great having those as a reference, but you can come over to the little house tool right here and you can get rid of those as well.
Mm-hmm.
So having those on and off is great for me as a writer as well. I love having them, but sometimes I'm like, get away. I just want to see what's underneath there.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Oh, we have a question from Chuck. Has UDB or Power played around with allowing the drill to be superimposed over a video, like a transparent view? We have not done that integrated into the software. However, I do know a couple of people have done that on the side, where they have taken a video of their show, but you have to get the exact angle that the video that was captured of the live show and have it be the exact same angle. So that's kind of the difficulty that you get for that, unless you're able to have a drone and take video from above. So it actually turned out pretty cool when it was done. I saw the after video of it. So
yeah, for my my kids' daycare, they asked me to come in and like talk about what I do. They were fascinated by it, so I did like a really rough version of that myself, and had like the actual live band and then the Pyware visualization side by side, so they could see it's like, oh, you do this in the computer, and then that in real life happens. So
right.
Yeah, but it was not easy to put together.
Right.
Yeah. So let's the next thing I'll talk about is labeling the field exactly what the band you're writing for calls it. So, for me, standard was side 1 and side 2. Well, some use side A and side B. Some say McDonald's and the cafeteria, or, the cow pasture and whatever. Whatever the band actually uses and the students are going to know, that's what we should label those things in. And so when you come in here and you go to File, Export, you can do this natively inside of Pyware as well. But when you go into File, UDBapp, and you sign into your account, if you come into the grid terminology section, you can adjust all of those things. So if it's not side 1, if they go A and B, you can change that right here. And I go inside and outside. If there's different terminology in front, behind, whatever that needs to be called, you can change those. And if you need to revert back to the default, you can always do that as well. So trying to be as specific as you can to alleviate any confusion for those students. And the band directors, for that matter. So that's always something I have on my questionnaire. I ask, how do you label the fields? Which side is which side? What do you call it? So
make it easier for them.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And then within that, I can save that as the custom field for that school, and then I don't have to worry about it for the future iterations of the drill movements. Let's see here. So follow leader and track tool. So what's great about UDB is that any tool that you use in Pyware, the exact movements of those positions transfer right into the app. So if you do a follow the leader tool, it's going to show you the actual path of the follow the leader. So I'll bring this in here. I don't have any, I think in this specific drill, there's no curved follow leaders, but there are some tracked follow leaders. So this one right here, you can see C2 starts here, and then they angle up to C20, and then they go across. So it's not going to draw that straight line from C2 to A4. It shows you the actual tracked follow leader.
Right.
And so that was using the track tool probably, or the individual follow leader. So you're able to see all of those movements. So here's a great example too. C8 goes all the way around the bend and comes back up to where C9
I have
is.
a hard time to see that line. There we go. Okay.
See it now?
Right.
Oh, let me get the out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got your green line there.
Yeah. So the green line is where they'd be going next, and so it shows you all of those values and the pathways. So the students really love being able to see the pathway. It saves so much time. You're not out there painting stuff and holding kids' hands and moving them around anything. They have a really strong idea now of where they're supposed to go.
Right.
So any tool that uses any kind of manipulated pathway is going to show up right in PyWare. So,
Right.
I mean, so I know some.
For that pathway, can you turn off those props right quick?
Yeah, of course.
The pathway was just getting a little cluttered there.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Perfect. Okay. So it goes from C19 to where the C8 is.
Yeah. And so I can animate that. You can follow C8 now as they do that follow leader.
Right.
Perfect. All right.
Awesome.
Let's move that window out. All right. So putting, let's talk about the production sheet for a second. So right now, this is a drill that I'm currently working on, so I haven't finished this. This is for next year. So at the top, so I don't have anything right now in the production sheet except for the counts. Okay, but everything you put in production sheet, the measure numbers, the text boxes, the notes, the titles, any of that stuff, all transfers into UDB. And so probably the most important feature within the production sheet is the measure numbers. The measure numbers, when you put this in there, it transfers right to the top bar of UDB. So you've got a lot of information that's given to the students and the directors here on that top bar. So you've got page number, you have counts, and then X counts is when the students cross a yard line on a particular move. Okay. But we can also click on these and change what they're telling us. So if you click on X counts, it's going to tell us step size. Okay. If you click on counts, it's going to tell you measures. Well, I haven't entered the measures in right here. And what I've seen from a lot of schools that I go out is that information is in the text box. It wasn't entered into the measure column in the production sheet. And so I can go back and open up a different file here that has that. And so when I come in here now, I select on a student and it's got measures 5 through 6, 7 through 8. So now I know the measures and I know the counts. And so from the student standpoint, being able to reference the music immediately like that is invaluable. And then I can also come over to the information tab and I can see any actual information that I've typed into the text box of the production sheet. You'll see both. You'll see text boxes and you'll see production sheet notes. Those will all show up there. So this is a move 8 or a halftime 4 for those students. And that will continue on through the entire production right there. Counts, measures, X counts, and step size. And then the information will always be available as well. So in terms of the text box and the production sheet information, utilize that as you being able to communicate with those students and with the directors. So put as much information as you deem relevant, and that will alleviate any misunderstandings within the drill. So if there's a halftime section, be really specific, say who's exactly moving halftime. If there's some rounded pathways that were adjusted for a few members, really be specific and say, A1 through 7, rounded pathways here, everyone else straight to the dot, or follow the form, whatever your philosophy is on those things. So try to be as specific as you can inside of the text box in the production sheets, because it's your way to finally being able to communicate with the students. Because if you get a coordinate sheet, that information is never going to be seen by the students. Right, and it's up to the director to convey that information. So try to put as much information as possible in there is always my suggestion. Let's see. Next thing. So when we get back to the drill here, you can see I've got all my sets here, and then I've got a couple subsets. So I've got this long one here. No one moves during this. This is my hold. And why it's important for you to label the actual holds as a subset or some kind of set is because in UDB, if I were to delete the number 11 here and have this be 11, it's going to calculate the step size over this entire frame of counts. So it'd be 39 counts that it was thinking would be just these 6 counts of movements. So it's really important to segregate, this is the move and this is the hold. So if it's a 16 count move and an 8 count hold, have a number be the move and then a subset be the hold. because that way UDB will calculate, oh, this is the right step size, the right amount of counts. And if you notice, I'll bring this window back into frame here. You can see I've got measures 17 and then slash 18 through 27. So my form of doing this and the way I explain to my band directors is that if you ever see a slash in the measure numbers or the counts, the slash indicates the difference between the move and the hold.
Okay.
So the students know that, okay, I moved during measure 17, I hold during measures 18 and 20 through 27. And then when I go forward to set 8A is the hold, the duration of the hold. You can see that it now just says measures 18 through 27.
Right.
Coming to the information, hold 40. Went back, it would be move 4, hold 40. And you can see now the 17/18 to 27. So that's been a system that's worked really well for me. I know every designer is going to have their own system. As long as you're able to explain it clearly and it works into the app so the students can make sense of it, awesome. Go for it.
Great.
All right. The next one is can get a little tricky. So we spoke about labeling the field exactly the way that the band directors speak about it. The next thing I'll say about this is try to get the field to look exactly the way it is as well. So I'm using right now a college setup. This is for a school in Texas. And you can see that I've got my front hash here. I'm going to turn all this off. And I've got 2 hashes in the back. So I've got the adjusted mathematical hash and then the actual hash here in the back because of the mathematical error that is created in an NCAA sized field. If you don't know what I'm speaking of, don't worry about it. If you do and you use it, great. If you don't and you know what to do, that's great too. I don't have a horse in the race. But this particular school uses a mathematically correct grid, which means that the actual back hash is a step and a third in front of the printed one they'd see on the field. So I've gone into Pieware with the help of Dustin one day and adjusted the grid layout to do that. And I've created my own custom saved grid layout that has my own floor cover on it, the same one you saw before, and has both hashes. I actually have the back hash, the adjusted back hash back here as well. Okay. So this would be the real sideline that they would see, but this would be the mathematically correct sideline that they'd want to measure off of.
Right.
And so in UDB, you can select which ones to use and which ones to calculate off of. In the future, that's going to be just a default setting. So you can go in there. I'm happy to share this layout with anybody if they'd like it. Dustin can speak. I think you've done a clinic or two when you guys started your first night sessions and night schools about how to do this. You have to go to the 24th step and kind of adjust it and yada yada. But that is all in utilities and grid designer. And what I will say is that you need to label what these hashes are. So when I click on this front hash, I've labeled this as NCAA front hash. When I click on my adjusted hash, it's labeled adjusted back hash. And then same thing for the true back hash here and for the true back sideline as well. The reason that's important is because when it exports to UDB, you'll have options as to which hash this is and it's labeled correctly. If you don't, it's just going to say hash number 2, hash number 3, hash number 4, whatever it ends up being. And then it's also important too is when you go in and print out your coordinate sheets, if you're going that route as well, as a backup, it has the correct labeled hash on there.
Right. We have a question from Daniel. What do you say, or what is the best font size for labels and symbols when you print out your drill sheets for when you do print those out?
Typically I'll use the default one, and I don't print with the letters like this. I'll print as the dots. Yeah, and that's a toggle when you go to print. And sorry, I'm getting a lot of text messages here. that's a toggle when you print, and then you can change that. But yeah, I typically go with the default. I always make a PDF first. I'll view it. If it's too small, I'll up the I'll up the size.
Right.
Yeah.
I believe the default size is a font size of 9 for the labels.
Yeah, I think the tags are 4 maybe.
Mhm.
So yeah. So you're happy to message me if anyone has questions about how to kind of set this up. Like I said, I've created my own custom Texas grid here. Let's see if I can, Texas field, adjusted hash, and sideline grid.
Great.
So that's the one.
Yeah, share that with me. I can send it out to everybody who wants it as well.
Perfect. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I've actually adjusted the numbers here as well to be correct to the mathematical one. And so because I stress to my groups to use the bottom of the numbers, top of the numbers, 11 and a quarter, 14 and a half. And so I've adjusted these numbers as a reference as well within that. Let's see. So we talked about this already. One more thing. So down here in the count structures, if you have a segment that is, say the beginning is at 60 or 54, if you have an elongated stretch of time where you're marching double time, or for that matter that you're marching half time, not just maybe one set, but a couple sets in the beginning or a couple sets at the end, go back in there and click the actual tempo that you're marching. And I would try to do that for every set, honestly. If you're marching in double time, click that in with the sync of the audio into double time, or click it into halftime. And the reason I say that is because then the step size that it's calculating in UDB is going to be correct. You're not asking the kids to divide by 2 or divide by 3 if it's a third time, or to multiply by 2. Now, should they be able to do that? Of course. But we just want to take the path of least resistance and make sure that the students can just click, know the number, and go. So that's what I try to do with all my groups. In the beginning here, there was a lot of double time sets, and I made sure I clicked in double time the whole way through. So sometimes I'll actually start a drill file where I'll click everything in just the printed tempo of what it's going to be. I'll go back in, we decide, hey, this is gonna be double time. Once I'm finished with that, with the drill file, before I go to export it, I'll go in and say, okay, I clicked this in at 54 beats per minute. Well, they're actually gonna march at 108. So let me multiply how long those counts are, go in there, change the count structure, and then I'll go in and redo the audio sync before I upload it. So it's been really, really helpful for the students especially. Next thing, so we talked about how you can.
We have a question about what do you do about mixed meters?
About mixed meters. So when syncing, so if it's 6/8 and you're marching to, if you're just marching to the duple feel, it's still gonna calculate it correctly because that's how many counts are going to be, you're gonna be marching. So whatever how many counts you're taking, that's what you want to click it into in terms of the field. Does that make sense? So if it's 8 measures at 6/8, but you're marching to the duple, to the dotted quarter note, so then it's gonna be 16 counts. So that you're gonna realize a 16 count phrase, and you're just gonna click in on 1 and 4 of the 6/8.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. So the next thing, we talked about how we created this custom hash here. So if you have stationary props throughout the whole field, and that they're not going to move, and you use those as a reference, let's say you had a back screen here, a smaller band perhaps, and you had just a flat panels that were going across the field here, or even larger bands if you had them across the back right here. You can come into your utilities and your grid designer, and you can drop down another hash. And if you drop down another hash, you'll get the right one. Yes, I did. So say I had a back panels that were right here, okay, for the whole show. I can create another hash that the students can then reference, and I can label that as back sideline props. And so say I had one on every 3 yard lines or something. Well, if I create this hash in there, then it would say, if I have a dot right here, it'd say 4 in front of the back sideline props. So it's a way that you can kind of cheat and give the students another way to reference where they are. So instead of saying, well, I'm 16 behind the front sideline or 16 behind the back hash, it's now I'm 4 steps from something.
Right.
Yeah. So you can drop these extra hashes anywhere on the field. Now they are going to extend the entire field. You can't just do it for a pocket of space right here. So if you only have props over on like maybe side 1, it's not going to be as useful if the people are on far side 2, but
Right.
it's a reference. And I know some schools, especially some colleges, they'll come in here and they'll drop those hashes right on the numbers on the top and the bottom. And so they've now kind of dissected the center or the outskirts of the field between the hashes 2 times. So instead of 16 off of the sideline, I'm now a step and a half from the top of the numbers.
Great.
So really great reference. For high schools outside of Texas, I can't speak to how consistent those numbers are on every single field, but in Texas, since everything has to be NCAA regulation, those numbers are very, very consistent. For colleges, yeah, they have to be true. So it's a great frame of reference to drop those in.
Perfect.
Yeah. The last couple of things the last thing I'll talk about here before we get to some of the final questions is, as a drill designer, I find it really important to have my own UDB account. So then I can upload my files to my account before I send it off to the band directors. So I can see what it's going to look like. I can animate things. I can look at it. I can make sure my labels are placed properly, that my props are in the right places. They're not moving in weird places, maybe. I can just see that everything looks clean. I can make sure that all the text is correct before I then upload it to the band directors. And for that matter, I always suggest at least speaking to the band director to seeing if they can get you an account, a license for that school. So you can go in and help clean up some of those things because, you know, if you're uploading multiple versions of things, those can kind of pile up. You're not able to delete files from Pyware. The only thing you can do is upload files to their accounts. So it's up to the band directors to be able to manage that. So if you don't have your own account that you can test things on, speak to those band directors, see if they can get you an account so you can make sure that everything looks great for them. And if something maybe didn't hop over or you want to adjust something, you can see exactly those changes that are porting over to the band's account.
Right.
So that's kind of the hit list that I have. I'm not sure if there's any other questions that may have popped up.
I know we have several that have not used UDB before. Do you have any questions about the software that we haven't covered? And those of you who are planning to use it again this year, do you have anything that you'd like to see covered as well? Yeah,
I'm happy to do a little tour or a little demo or whatever you guys may want.
We have a question from Craig. He's found, I found my forms tend to lose their sync with the music the farther I get through the drill in UDB. They're synced perfectly in Pyware, but why would I be losing the sync in UDB?
The first thing I'd say is make sure that you're using an OGG file and not a WAV file. Sometimes those WAV files can be huge and it does cause a little degradation with the sync. I do have some that are maybe a count off, and that's just we fixed that in the new iteration, so that's not going to be an issue. I haven't seen anything that's more than a count off, but I'm not sure why it would be getting further off the more you wrote. So sometimes just renaming the OGG file and re-uploading it to Pyware and then re-uploading that file to UDB can solve that problem.
Okay. Could you give us a quick overview or give a quick description of the new features that were added to UDB or that are coming this year?
I can't talk about the new features that are coming quite yet. Everything's ready to go, but we don't want to talk about anything that prematurely. I'll say that. But everything that we have discussed at TMEA or at Midwest or anything that we've demoed is going to be true. So I can say that you will see the students' names. The tag ID is live. That's the big feature that everyone's been talking about. So that's one of the things that it doesn't port over. We don't take the cast list that you may enter into UDB. What we've designed is we're going to call it tag ID or touch ID. So when a student signs into that specific dot, you'll see who is the most recent person that's signed into that dot, and that's who it is. And you can have multiple people if you have shadows, sharing a dot. You'll see both of those names, be able to swipe between.
Well, we have a question if geotag attendance would be coming in this update as well.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming the ID tag, if you would, that's based on the UDB users' login information.
Yes.
All of their user information that they
set
up.
So when the student creates their account, every time they sign in, they say what dot am I signing into? So which is great, especially I use this all the time for color guard people. Color guard dots usually change all the time.
Right.
They open at your D12 and the second movement your D2. So it allows them to sign into those different positions between movements or even in the same movements when their dots change. Great. And so you'll be able to see who's logged in most recently to that coordinate. And then they can take a picture of themselves with their app as well. So when you click on them, you'll see their name and you'll see their photo. Great.
We have a question about pricing from Ed. How is the UDB app priced and how does that work?
So it's $10 per user. So band directors, students, or directors there's no director cost or upgraded costs for functionality or students or anything like that. It's just $10 per user. And I think you have to have over 40 licenses to hit that $10 mark.
Okay, great.
And so what you just buy a set of subscriptions, we give you the access code, and typically band directors will have the boosters or their schools just pay for those amount of licenses or collect the money from the students and pay it that way.
Whether it be
and it's good for an entire calendar year. So it's good for marching band, it's good for indoor drumline, it's good for winter guard. All of those, we have lots of anything again you do with indoor groups, any of those floor covers, any of that stuff can all go from Pieware into UDB.
Great. We have a question from Craig. Is the plan still to have two different versions? If so, can the director have one version and the students have the other? I know there's Pro.
So this coming year, everybody gets access to the Pro features, as we're calling it, and so there won't be any difference between those two things. So in a year or two, that may be a situation that you find yourselves in, but it's nothing to worry about for next year.
Okay. Great. Let's see. We have Doug here. He says that he's had a very good experience with UDB at his university. It sped up his learning process, and the UDB staff was always available to help with any issue they had. So
good to hear.
Nice endorsement there.
There you go.
Do we have any other questions for Stuart while we have him? Any other questions on how to export? Actually, would you mind running through the full export process? I don't think we covered that fully.
Yeah, so it's easy as saving basically. So you're just going to come up here to File, Export to UDB app file, and you'll sign into your account. And then your file is right here, and you're going to upload it to the UDBapp server. You'll see all the files that you have in there already. I have a lot.
Can we name it something different and try to pull it down as well?
What's that?
Can we name it something different so we can pull it down on your iPad as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
So we'll come in here. We will export file. We'll sign into my account. We'll name this Pieware Homeschool. We'll upload. You can see that it's exporting, preparing to upload. And it's done.
Cool. We can walk through the download process.
Yeah, we'll come in here. We'll open up Ultimate Drill Book. Slide up. There it is. Press download. Download song. Download prop images. And it's that quick. There you
Awesome.
go. So when I say you can literally write up until your rehearsal starts, you literally can write up until the student's rehearsal starts, upload, the students download, you're good to go.
That's great. We have a couple of questions that come in. Do you happen to know when the new features might be announced?
In the coming months.
In the coming months. Okay.
Yes, they will be readily available for you to test and play around with the students before they show up for band camps.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
We have a question from Craig. Is there a way to increase the size of the dot and the label inside of UDB?
So the functionality that you have currently in the settings here is just from the top dots, letters, and the size there. I'm remembering a long time ago there might have been a functionality. I will say the interface and the detail that you're going to see on the new version is much higher, and it's going to look a lot crisper.
Okay.
And I will have to check if you're able to change the size of the dots though. I don't know the answer to that, and I don't want to speak to it as I'm not a programmer for the app.
Great. Awesome. We have a question from Hernan. It seems like that you prefer to use a single symbol, for example, a dot or an X. Are there any negatives to using a single symbol for the performers in Pieware? Like they can still have different instruments in the real view. Can they be auto assigned based on label instead of symbol? So Hernan, the information is assigned by symbol automatically in Pieware. They can be adjusted in your visuals editor by selecting the group of performers that you're wanting to be, let's say flutes, and you can assign them flutes in the visuals editor. At this point, you can use your symbols like he has currently, and then when you print or export to UDB, you can choose the option for print as dots instead of using the actual symbols that you're working with. And that is the same in UDBapp. And then we have a question here about, is there a dark compatibility for UDBapp? The dark for dark mode.
There is not. That's kind of my the way to darken the screen is to add the field cover.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's a way you can do that. And if you're worried about battery life in terms of that, so the average battery life for me when I'm running rehearsal with my iPad is maybe 15% over the course of a 2-hour rehearsal.
Okay.
Partly because it's only on when you're teaching from it, and then I turn it off.
Okay.
And from the students are in the app for an average of about 10 seconds.
I see. Chuck says he's more concerned about the visibility in full sunlight. So he's also in Texas. How do you combat that?
So when I taught at the university, you're not going to believe me, but our rehearsal time in the stadium was Tuesday, Thursday from 12:30 to 2:45.
Oh, so right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I just turned my brightness up, and I even had polarized sunglasses, and I honestly never had an issue. But I obviously made sure that I was turning I had a case on it, and I was turning it upside down when I was not using it, so it didn't blow up from the heat. So yeah, I honestly can say that I have never had an issue with glare or anything like that. I had an OtterBox case on it, so it had the anti-reflective cover, and so I think that helped as well. If I just had my iPad out there, I may have some issues, but having that screen protector is really important.
Great. We have a question from Roland. Do you have to have the latest version to upload? At this point in time, you can upload from version 9 or version 10. You do not have to have the most current version 10 in order to upload to UDB. Let's see. Chuck was commenting that students were having trouble the last couple of seasons with some of the less expensive phones. So,
yeah, there was a known little issue as they do updates with OSs, with the iPhone 5s and 6s, I think back then. But we've worked to remedy a lot of those issues. So.
Great. Are there any other questions for either of us for this evening? I'm glad to have everybody here tonight. We have a wish list request for UDB. In future versions of UDB, would you look at the possibility of having a faster way to mark the sheet music we load into the UDB app?
So marking it as in tagging the set, putting the set tags on it, or just making notes in it?
Craig, if you could expand on that for us.
Or if you want to send, and if anybody has any questions, please feel free to email me. It's just Stuart, STUART, @ultimatedrillbook.com, and I'll be happy to get back to you. Or if anybody would like a demo account to play around with it, if you shoot me an email again, Stuart, STUART, @ultimatedrillbook.com, I can set you up with a 3-week demo account trial. I can upload some drills into it. You can upload some drills into it, play around with it. We'll be happy to answer any questions from that standpoint as well.
Great. And he was asking about the set tags.
Set tags.
And entering the set tags.
No, but I'll say all you have to do is do it once. So I mean, I've gotten really quick at it because I know it. I've done it so many times to set up these things for my directors and whatnot. So I can do a full score in maybe under 10 minutes. For the students, here's what I suggest. So for the students, I go back into Sibelius or Finale, whatever it is, and I actually do rehearsal marker numbers that are the set numbers.
Okay.
So then I print off a master score or a master set of parts, because I mean, for a movement, a student's probably not going to have more than 2 or 3 pages.
Mm-hmm.
What I do is then I put those up on the whiteboard. So here's flute 1, here's flute 2, here's flute 3, whatever it ends up being all the way down to percussion. Mm-hmm. Then I just tell the students, hey, take your phone, come up there, snap a photo of all your miniature parts. Mm-hmm. And then they put it up there, and then it's just dragging popsicle stick. I call them popsicle sticks, but mm-hmm. Set marker 1 to number 1 in the music, set marker 2 to number 2. It's kind of foolproof. And so from the student standpoint, that speeds up the process immensely. They don't need to be looking and saying, oh, what measure was it? Did I put it in the front and the back? It's kind of foolproof, like I said, for them. Right. And then I'll have the same thing. I'll have a score that has that too. So I'm just dragging things back and forth and just matching up numbers. I'm just playing connect the dots at that point.
Right. Well, let's see here. Well, Stuart, I think that's it for tonight. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And be sure to join us on Wednesday for night school. We're going to go through advanced visuals. So we'll see y'all then. Thank you very much, Stuart. Y'all have a great evening.
Thanks. Same to you. Thanks, everybody.
Right. Bye-bye.